when I tell you about the sound and on the sound I lead the way. Tell you, cause it's the sound to make the hygiene them I come and make them rock so. Come when I tell you when the sound I beat the leg of them I go so. Let go, can't let go that. Live it up, can't live it up, but when I tell you about the rock.
Manly Buchanan, who's from Kingston, Jamaica, is a DJ and singer who mostly works under the name Big Youth. He came to prominence as a sound system DJ in Jamaica in the early 70s, particularly with the Lord Tippertone sound system. His peak popularity was in the 70s. He faded in the 80s, but I gather that he is still at least somewhat active. Counting the albums he's involved in is difficult, but let's just say a lot. Hi, my name's Dan, and this is a review of the album Screaming Target by Big Youth, which was released in 1972. It was his debut full album of his, and it's my first encounter with him, I think. And as usual, I start with trying to genre hole the music that I'm talking about. I'm going to find that really easy this time is reggae. Okay. But I need to do some contact for this about sound systems. So this was music that came out of sound systems, which were, let's try and do very quick history of that or context. Mobile outdoor music parties in Jamaica, often huge, with the technology needed to play records. Now, these started all the way back in the 1940s, and I shudder to think what on earth the technology was like back then. And the creation of these, which were big business in Jamaica for quite a while, was partly a response to the restrictive radio in Jamaica. And so people wanting to hear music which wasn't kind of the radio broadcast stuff. And so they would set up these kind of big, kind of, I gather they were outdoors generally. This is Jamaica, of course, so the weather's generally quite good. And it was a bit like, big raves happened in Britain in the 90s, but this was a thing. So there'd be these big music parties with somebody who was basically playing records. So it was effectively what might have later been called a disco, but the word disco didn't really come in until quite a bit later. And then initially it started by playing American rock and roll stuff, and as ska and other native Jamaican styles emerged, it became a major way of spreading the Jamaican music. Sometimes records were made basically as a single copy just for a sound system to take and to play. And these were kind of exclusives to these sound systems, which were quite an interesting thing. So my kind of understanding of this is that it's sort of replaced in some ways the idea of having a band playing a gig by having people playing records instead, but it was that sort of size of event. And then they could record in the studio, and you didn't have to have quite so much equipment to make it happen live. As a result, though, there were the people who were dealing with the records, these DJs emerged, who, as well as playing the records, started to do something called toasting, which was talking and singing over the instrumental passages in tracks, possibly linking tracks together as well. So in the 70s, a guy called DJ Cool Herc brought this idea into New York, and this was the start of hip-hop, which was talking over other people's existing records, and that became rapping, and rapping came through from this toasting. Probably. And that's probably a huge oversimplification as well. Right, I've done that background. Back to this album. So this is an album of Big Youth singing and toasting, so that's kind of talking, over backing records, which were by other people. But these were dub versions, so they'd been taken most of the singing out. And the producer of this album is a guy called Gussie Clark. And I understand that these tracks were tracks that he'd produced as well. So these are records that have been released by people as kind of normal records that he had produced, and he'd created as well an instrumental version of the tracks that he produced for use for this kind of stuff. So these instrumental versions are called rhythms, or sometimes I believe riddims, just in a Jamaican dialect. Um, so that's the context of what we got here. But I didn't pick this up until I read about this. I just thought this was a fairly straightforward reggae album. We've got a bit of kind of talking and singing, and then other people singing at various points. So we've got occasional other people singing, bands that are other people, and Big Youth talking and singing over that. Sometimes what he's doing is interjecting between the sung stuff by other artists. And there's immediately on the first track, there's a bit that I recognise, which is "No, No, No," which is from a song that I know quite well, and he's doing that. And then sometimes they've got tracks where we've got little bits of song, and he responds to that, and he just kind of expands on the idea or contrasts with the idea. And when I found out that this was what it was, I then found it fascinating. There's some, in terms of content, it's really know a lot of it. Some of it's he's a Rastafarian, so there's some Rastafarian content in there. But most of it's kind of vague and general, and he's kind of whiffling around with his talking. I don't know as if he'd be written any of it, or if he's making it up as he goes along, which is quite interesting. If he has, I didn't pick up on this toasting aspect on my first listen. Not even really on my second listen. Only as I was putting the review together and gathering the information about it, did I really realise what was going on here. And I think that says to me, it works. It works as an album. It works kind of musically, but it is more interesting with the context. The overall feel is reggae, of course, on this. It's quite pleasant as a listen. And it kind of scratched my itch for an occasional bit of reggae, which I do get. As I said, it's an interesting as a concept, and I enjoyed it more when I understood what was going on. Historically interesting, as this is part of the origins of what became hip hop in New York. And I can see the connection there and what's going on. So that's what I think of this album, and a whole lot of background information about it. I'd love to know what you think, though, so please let me know what you think of this. If there's anything else you want to add about posting and sound systems, then please do leave a comment. I'd love to get extra information. But that's it from me for now.
So baby, gotta be sincere.
I can go anywhere and still be nowhere.